I want to read you a sentence that was left on the comment section of one of my videos the other day. It was written by somebody who believes they're being helpful. They said, "Progressivism wants to free the heteronormative man. If one thinks they are normal, straight-acting men out there without serious deconstructing, one is deluding themselves." This is the most arrogant thing someone can say to someone. It's the idea that I am sick and that you have the cure. Today we need to talk about why so many people think they need to fix us and why we need to politely tell them to get lost. My name is Frank Schneider, my friends call me Fritz, and this is Daddybear America. There is a lot happening in the progressive left right now. And there's some recalculations going on, and I don't want to get too political on this channel. I don't think this is the space for that. There's other channels that do that. How does this relate to the gay community, and specifically the larger gay community that I think this channel serves? Just normal guys who do guy things and have guy sex. I mean, that's kind of it. And, there's also some bisexuals here, and there's some straight guys here too. And you guys are all welcome. This channel is about masculinity. It's about men being masculine, and that's okay. So when I get a comment in the comment section indicating that somehow normal is not okay, and the reasons are a litany of just bad attributes that, like wife beating and misogyny and putting down, like racism and all this stuff that I don't know where this comes from. I do know where it comes from, and we're going to get there. But where this list comes from that you can just attribute all of these attributes to somebody who is acting normal, it sounds funny to even say, but okay. So what is going on here? Today, that's what we're talking about. And I will show you the whole comment, the exchange. I'll throw it up on the screen. It's too long to read, so but just know that the exchange went somewhat like this, and there it is. So the basic premise, the point that this person is arguing from, is that the modern masculine man, the heteronormative man, is sick. That there is something deeply, deeply wrong with heteronormality, and what we need to do is fix it. And it just so happens the person in this comment had the answer, and it's left-wing progressivism. Now, I do want to touch on this. I want to touch on the origins of these ideas, and I want to touch on the solutions that they offer, and I want to touch on why they're deeply wrong and why they're deluding themselves. They don't even know they're wrong. They're wrong. So basically, the origins of this are from high-level education, universities, gender courses, basically the same ideas that came out of the Me Too movement about how toxic masculinity is ruining society, and somehow the answer is femininity. And turning guys feminine, and like getting in touch with your feelings and expressing feelings and telling your girlfriend how it makes you feel when she straps on a dildo and you in the ass. So throughout a lot of these universities over the past 30 or 40 years, they've been teaching more and more progressive, verging on, some like really left-leaning concepts, including critical race theory, gender theory, which is basically that gender is a spectrum and that sex is a spectrum and that we are all sort of just in a soup of gender and sex and sexuality, and we're all just sort of oozing around each other, and this university type talk, I've seen it, I've experienced the classes, I was indoctrinated by it, and I had to retrain myself to get out of this way of thinking. But that is what they're teaching in the universities. So once you go through some of these university courses, you come out with this new way of thinking, and you think, oh my God, how could I have not seen the world like this before? What you don't know is that they are literally retraining you and indoctrinating you and using authority to try and show you a world that you maybe didn't see was happening before, whether it's gender or race and so what they do is they mix a little bit of science, a little bit of psychology, and a little bit of sociology, and they mix it all up, and then they throw all these ideas at you that basically weaponize colonization, white people, men, and they offer in return the alternatives: multiculturalism, survivor complex, victimization complex, and of course, women are better. And so right from the get-go, there's a number of issues, there's a number of problems here that I just have to just raise my hand and say, you know what, I don't buy this, and I'm not going for this anymore. I think there's something wrong here. I used to have the mentality where I would walk into a situation and start telling people the way I thought the world really was based on my university education. And I've explained to you in the past, I got into a debate with a black guy about black people, and I didn't fare well. I didn't do well. I used all the tools from my university liberal education, and I argued all these points about slavery and systemic oppression, and you know what? He got quite upset at me, and he said no, and he told me a number of reasons why I was wrong and why the entire idea was wrong, and it became very uncomfortable for me to say or rebut anything he was saying, because I'm not black, and I don't have that experience. So really, he was speaking from experience, having lived in those cultures, in that world. And so for me to, at that point, use my sort of university lingo and try and explain any further would just make me look really, really stupid. So there's an example of where university intellect sort of breaks down when you get to real world examples dealing with real people. Another example of this is when I was taking my motorcycle and riding across the country. And this was during COVID, so like the whole shutdown and everything like that. And there was a lot of like Trump, signs across the entire Midwest into the mountain regions and the plains into South Dakota. There's a lot of Republican conservative ideology over there. And it opened my eyes to a world that I simply didn't understand. First of all, most of that land is farmland, and I don't know anything about running a farm. And there's also it's extremely rural, and you can go hundreds of miles without seeing anybody. And I thought, I wouldn't know how to live out here. I don't know anything about this world that I am circumnavigating on my motorcycle. And hopefully nothing happens where I need help, because I don't know what I do. Of course, I had a cell phone, and cell phones work, and everything is fine, so I would have been fine. But the truth is, and those people, by the way, are very nice. They're just like, they're even sometimes a lot nicer than a lot of what we would think of as progressive, left-leaning, like empathetic people. The conservatives are some of the sweetest people I know. So as I'm driving out there, I'm just coming to the realization, I don't know anything about this place. And for me to apply my knowledge and my worldview on these people to say, you guys need to get straight about some things, excuse the pun, let me show you how the real world works. And the fact that I couldn't live out there because I wouldn't know how to get food at the grocery store. And it just struck me how naive I was. And so when I get a lesson like that, wherever I go in the world, I could go to the jungles of the Dominican Republic, and again, I'm completely lost. I have no idea about that world. I could go virtually anywhere on the planet, and I would be a fish out of water. So the idea that somebody like a progressive leftist can come into our comment section and say the real problem with men is heteronormativity. This, in basically, it's a pejorative. So you would say to somebody, well, you're behaving very heteronormative. What does heteronormative really mean? Well, it means that the default setting for men is heterosexual. And just from a biological standpoint, that is true. In order for a civilization to reproduce, just a basic sexual being, in order to reproduce, you need a male and a female. And you basically, in most basic terms, that's an egg and a sperm. And that is the default setting for Homo sapien. So anything else doesn't reproduce the colony, and therefore the colony fails. So yes, the heteronormative is the default. Now, the problem with this is a lot of these gender studies people apply all of these other things like racism and misogyny and this and that to the idea of heteronormative. But the true definition of heteronormative is that heterosexuality is the default setting. Anything else is not the default setting. And that's, from my standpoint, pretty true. But that also means that anybody questioning heteronormativity means that they have a better idea. And their better idea seems to be to feminize men. And so that's where this is coming from. And if you take a look at the current sort of Democratic-leaning progressive wing, you see a lot of input from women. I fully acknowledge that women have a place in decision-making at the highest levels. And we've seen it done in many countries, and in fact in this country, short of the presidency itself. And we are a very male-led society here in the United States. We always have been, and that is okay. It's different than other countries, but a lot of countries are that way. I'm not saying that we can't have a female president, but I am saying that we shouldn't elect a president based on their gender. So we shouldn't be making choices simply because it's a man or a woman. We should be making choices about who's the president based on who's the best president. A lot of this can be boiled down to this idea of empathy, and that there are victims out there, and therefore to help the victims, we need to cure some portion of the victimizer, the oppressor, in order to make the victim feel better. This is somehow like never-ending empathy, or these ideas of unconstrained empathy. Basically, the more empathy, the better. And the problem with that is it drills home the idea that there is an oppressor and a victim to society, and therefore the oppressor needs to be kind of slapped down so that the victim can rise up. This has its roots in, this is what we would call equity. And equity is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Marxism. So you need a lot of victims in order to institute Marxism in a society, because the state needs to be able to help you. And the only way the state can help is if you need help and you are a victim. So in the United States, generally, we haven't had this type of ideology here. We've had a pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You are not oppressed. You are not a victim. You have the means to success right in your hands and in your head. And you can do it. If you want to live the American dream, you can do it. And up until recently, that was mostly true. The economy has shifted quite a bit, and there is some problems with the home prices, as well as university prices, and some other things that just got incredibly expensive. There are some complicated reasons for some of this, and there's some simple reasons for some of the others. The answer to fixing a lot of these problems is not to make men more like women, or to drill out or somehow hollow out the heteronormativity out of the modern man. There's nothing wrong with being hetero, and there's nothing wrong with being normative. And that is the root, the basis for heteronormativity. So when a bunch of gay guys say there's nothing wrong with being normal, and somebody pipes up and says, no, there is something wrong with being normal, because that means you're just a straight guy who has sex with guys. I don't even know what to say to something like that, but that's the implication here. That somehow if you just act normal like the straight guys and you have sex with guys, you're somehow pretending to be heteronormative. And that's a problem because it comes with a bunch of baggage, including racism and misogyny. So there's a bunch of correlation here. There's a bunch of just glommed on BS that doesn't belong. And it really helps to make the case for some of these gender studies people that are trying to advocate for, DEI and all these other things so that we can create a victim class and then boost them up using equity. There's a quote by Gilbert Kenneth Chesterton. He was an author from London, UK, and he said, "Don't ever take a fence down until you know why it was put up in the first place." I butchered that, but I'll throw up the quote here. You can see that that's the gist of it. And the explanation, the reason you would say something like this is there's an instinct in humans, in society, that if you come upon a fence, it's blocking your way. Maybe it's ugly. Maybe you don't like the look of it. And so therefore you go about tearing it down. And then the monsters come. That's actually the premise for Stranger Things. I mean, no spoilers here, but within the first episode, you get that. No spoilers here. So anyway, the premise is don't knock down a fence or open a gate until you know why it was put there in the first place. And I would apply that in this scenario that we're talking about gender and men and masculinity. That applies here. So when you look at the symptoms of emasculating a man, in terms of what happens when you tell a man to be more feminine and you sort of make him a beta or a simp or whatever you want to call this, the soy boy, when you make them remove their masculinity and turn them in more feminine and, feminine acting, the scenario, the symptoms that occur are profound. And I'll just read you a few right here. So some of the side effects of emasculating a man, psychologically emasculating them, making a man feel less masculine, which is the goal of progressive leftism, according to this person, to fix the heteronormative man. So some of the personal and mental health downsides: insecurity and shame, reduced self-confidence, emotional suppression, reluctance to seek help. That's strange, because that sounds like exactly the things we're trying to fix by removing heteronormativity. So procrastination and indecisiveness, loss of libido, that's all the things that men are currently recovering from. So we've been doing this. Women are leading the charge. And, we've been using affirmative action to basically help out victim class, and mostly that goes to helping white women. I don't know if you guys know that. Affirmative action assistance mostly helped white women. And so they got jobs that men had, they got salaries that men had, they got all the benefits that they had been looking to get, and now they have them. They generally have reached pay parity. Even though they take more time off for having kids and things like this. They've reached, they now graduate at a higher rate from universities than men. And the comparisons go on and on and on. The benefits that women have received from affirmative action are too numerous to count, really. Let's go on and read some more downsides to emasculating a man. Relational and social downsides. Relationship withdrawal, abusive behavior, conflict avoidance and aggression, lack of responsibility, and impaired partnership. At a time when coupling is at its lowest, when birth rates are at its lowest, when the feminization of man is at its highest, and we have progressives saying we need to fix men by removing the heteronormativity, you would think they would draw a correlation. You would think that they would draw a correlation between a lot of things in the progressive movement, like homelessness occurring mostly where the most progressive liberal policies exist, whether it's San Francisco, Washington, D.C., New York City. All of these are Democratic bastions. You are a Democrat, you will win in these cities, guaranteed, and yet these are the places where homelessness is the worst. So why do we trust progressive Democrats to solve problems when they are the worst at solving some of these problems? I don't know, but at some point they are so convinced they're right because they do have a lot of the Democrats have a lot of degrees. That is true. College graduates are generally swinging Democratic these days, and that's probably because the Democrats are swinging more elite these days. And that's not a good thing. I think a lot of people hear, oh, elite, I want to be elite, so let's be a Democrat. It's not great because that means you're not really for the working class anymore. You're for the elite class. And a lot of us, frankly, financially, are not the elite class. So this is the paradox of what we used to accuse the conservatives of, that they would vote conservative because the conservatives were the party of the rich. And so if you're a poor person voting conservative, you're doing it on the expectation that at some point you might become rich yourself. It seems now that the Democrats are suffering from this very paradoxical logic that if we vote elite, maybe someday we will be elite too. And it's deeply flawed. It also comes with the baggage of thinking you're right about something when you're not. And I don't know what to say about this other than to point to sociology and say, boy, guys, it really seems like there's a problem here. And the problem seems to be taking masculinity away from men because you think it's a bad thing, because you see a victim class, and the way you go about helping victims is by removing the threat. The threat being part of our society that makes it function. And that is the fence we shouldn't remove. Because the fence exists there because we need men in society. We need them to protect us. We need them to lift heavy things. There's also this idea that women can do everything that men can do. It's unfortunate that they think this way because I want to arm wrestle someone. I want to destroy them. And if I were to do this, I would probably pick a woman to do. Because men are generally 30 to 70% stronger right out of the gate. It's pretty easy to win in an arm wrestling match against a woman. So let's put some money on this and let me get to my arm wrestling. As we've said in the past, men are inherent leaders through the ages, mostly because we were military and strategic leaders, because we fought wars. And yes, that meant there were some people who suffered and some people who won. That is the history of biology. And it goes back 4 billion years. So the idea that somehow we're going to change men to be more like women so that we'll be a better place and men won't want to fight anymore, I'm sorry, that's just not true. That's denying our own biology. We are leaders. We are balanced. We are stable. We are strong. We are stoic. These are all great attributes of male, normal, masculinity. And some of us have sex with other men. And that is masculine too. I strongly suggest we don't go about tearing down this fence just because we don't like the look of it in the progressive left wing. I strongly suggest you leave the fence of masculinity in place and realize that what you're talking about when you talk about the pejorative sense of heteronormality is some like BS toxic masculinity thing, which is just code for assholes. There are assholes on both sides. There are assholes on every side. So to say that somehow men are worse because we have masculinity is flawed and biased right from the get-go. And finally, anybody who comes to you saying, I have a solution and I can fix you, understand they know nothing about the problem they're trying to fix. They're trying to solve for a problem that they see, and it's not your problem. So you should tell them to get lost. You don't need to be freed from your nature. You need to inhabit it. We should be men, we should smell like men, we should look like men, and we should act like men because we are men. That's what we do. So, welcome to the new year 2026. This is this episode. If you enjoyed it, do all the things down below, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.